Hello. Chapter 16. Chanticleer's prayer is met by one thing, John Wesley's rage by another. To anyone who might have seen him standing on the coop that night, Chanticleer would have seemed to be black iron. A breeze tugged at his feathers. They flipped forward on his back, ragged, vagrant, but the rooster himself was iron and immovable. On this night he had nothing to do with breezes. At dusk he had crowed the crow of grief, but there had been no satisfaction in it. He had done it more the lord of the land than father of the children, abruptly, briefly, bitterly, formally, a bitten crow. And all who lay awake listening were left more agonized than had the crow rung truly with Chanticleer's deeper sadness. But then, when the crow was done, the rooster was not done. And so he held his position for hours against the night, while the animals beneath him, though they did not sleep, honored him with stillness and silence. "You, God," Chanticleer finally said, but his iron body did not move. His muscles were taut wire. Had someone touched him at that moment, he would have spun and murdered him. "You, God, promise, then break promises," he said. "You give, you warm me to your gift, you cause love to go out of me to your gift, and then you kill me, you kill my gift. I did not want this land. I would just as soon have traveled my way, taken what came to me by chance and left the rest. I would just as soon have gone a-mucking through this world of yours unnoticed, untouched by your righteous hand. Then I may have been empty but not bereft. I didn't know what blessing you had it in you to offer. Then I may have been alone but not lonely. I didn't know what love you could ordain. You, God, you took me out of my life. You set me into this false place. You made me believe in you. You gave me hope. Oh, my God, you taught me to hope, and then you killed me." Chanticleer trembled where he stood. He closed his eyes against the darkness to control the trembling, not because he thought his words were wicked, simply because he did not want to tremble before God. "If I had never had sons, how could I lose sons? If I had never ruled a land, how could I fear to lose the land? It is in the giving that treachery begins. If I had never loved these animals, which the Almighty God put into my keeping, I would not die thinking that they may die. But by your will I am where I am. By your will things are what they are. Now by my will I demand to hear it from your own mouth. Where are my sons? Why is Pertolote weeping underneath me in the coop? And what am I to say to her? Bear them, bless them, watch them, then ball them into tiny balls and stuff them in the earth. I'll tell her. She'll be comforted. I'll tell her the will of God." Chanticleer drove hot air deep into his lungs. He roared, "And by my will I demand to know now. It is most certainly time now to know. O God, where are you? Why have you hidden your face from us? Why now, of all times, when things are on the rim of disaster, have you turned away? 9 months! I have not seen the stars for 9 months. In 9 months we have not seen a single passing of the sun, and the moon is only a memory. Faith, right? By faith I should believe that the spheres still turn above these everlasting clouds. Tell me, infinite God, tell me what we have done to be shut from the rest of the universe. But you won't tell me. You've dropped us in a bucket and let us be. It wears a person out, you know. Yeah, well." Then the rooster did move. His head sank between his shoulders. His wings drooped. He broke into tears. My sons, he wept. "Why didn't God let me die instead of you?" Chanticleer sobbed several moments together, and then he spoke in another voice without raising his head. He wills that I work his work in this place. Indeed, I am left behind to labor. Right. And one day he may show his face beneath his damnable clouds to tell me what that work might be, what's worth so many tears, what's so important in his sight that it needs to be done this way. "Oh, my sons!" Chanticleer suddenly wailed at the top of his lungs, a light flaring before it goes out. "How much I want you with me!" The dark land everywhere held still, as if on purpose before such a ringing, echoing cry. The dark sky said nothing. The rooster, with not an effort to save himself, sagged, rolled down the roof, slipped over the edge of the coop, and fell heavily to the ground. Wind and sobs together were knocked out of him. He lay dazed. And then it was that the dun cow came to him. She put her soft nose against him to nudge him into a more peaceful position. Gently she arranged his head so that he might clearly see her. Her sweet breath went into his nostrils, and he assumed that he woke up, but he didn't move. The dun cow took a single step back from the rooster, then, and looked at him. Horns, strangely dangerous on one so soft, stood wide away and sharp from either side of her head. Her eyes were liquid with compassion, deep, deep as the earth is deep. Her brow knew his suffering, and knew, besides that, worlds more. But the goodness was that, though this wide brow knew so much, yet it bent over his pain alone, and creased with it. Chanticleer watched his own desolation appear in the brown eyes of the cow, then sink so deeply into them that she shuddered. Her eyes pooled as she looked at him. The tears rose and spilled over, and then she was weeping, even as he had wept a few minutes ago, except without the anger. Strangely, Chanticleer felt an urge to comfort her, but at this moment he was no lord, and the initiative was not in him. A simple creature only, he watched, felt the miracle take place. Nothing changed. The clouds would not be removed, nor his sons returned, nor his knowledge plenished. But there was this. His grief had become her grief, his sorrow her own, and though he grieved not one bit less for that, yet his heart made room for her will and wisdom, and he bore the sorrow better. The dun cow lay down next to the rooster and spent the rest of the night with him. She never spoke a word, and Chanticleer did not sleep, but for a little while they were together. At dawn, Chanticleer crowed lauds, and then he went alone into his coop. There was movement there in the dim light, as if the animals were waking up, but that movement was all pretending, since not one of them had been asleep. No rain, no wind, but there had been a storm that night nonetheless, and the silence of the last several hours had been unreadable. So the animals had blinked and breathed their way through the long night, all of them awake. The hens, the mice, the fox, the dog, the black ant too, the beautiful and mourning Pertolote, and a weasel. Everyone saw solemnity in their lord. Everyone permitted him to walk to his perch undisturbed. Everyone except... "Rooster knows who, don't he?" said John Wesley Weasel from a position directly in front of Chanticleer. But Chanticleer hardly saw him. "I'm tired, John Wesley." His eyes rested instead on Pertolote, and by the bowing of her head he saw that she was filled with sorrow. She was also very tired and should sleep. "John knows who," snapped the weasel. "Once is, always is. No changing the wicked, no teaching the vile." "Ah, John, speak to me at prime. Explain yourself then." But the weasel wouldn't let the rooster pass. "Is only clawing and killing for his like. Execution, execution, chop away his head." He was warming to his subject. Chanticleer looked him in the eye for just a second, then looked away again. "You make no sense," he said. Compulsively he glanced back to Pertolote. She was shivering. The rooster felt the weasel's chatter added trouble to her sorrow. "Clear out," he commanded. But John Wesley suddenly hunched his back so high that his fore and hind legs pressed against each other. It was a fighting posture. He had waited all night long to say what burned inside of him, and now it swept him away. Hate him, he hissed, flashing his teeth. "One murders chicks, one breaks a hen what should live. Oh, how John does hate him." That triggered Mondokani. Reading threat, the dog reared from his place at the door and plunged toward the weasel to pitch him out. "Off, mountain-back!" cried the weasel. "Touch me, and I touch you with what for?" The weasel's teeth were razor-sharp and furious. His courage was phenomenal. "Mundocani," Chanticleer ordered. "Sit down." He did. "You, John Wesley." He glared at the weasel. "I don't ever want to hear that again. Never again in this coop or on this land do I want to hear that you hate a living soul." "One wants hating," the weasel persisted. "Pleads for hating, kills for hating." "Not hating, John Wesley. Look what he—" "Not hating!" Chanticleer's crow was full of thunder. Hens tottered and began walking on their roosts. The weasel cowered, but yet he didn't stop talking. "Here's one W," he mumbled. "What won't kiss no rat?" Then Chanticleer gazed at him with sudden understanding. "Ha! Wise little weasel, so you think you know who killed my children." "Think? I think that I know! I know!" "Good thinking, perhaps, John Wesley, but your conclusions are bad. He couldn't have done it." "Was neither," said the weasel, and that did it. Immediately the coop blew up. Confusion, motion, wild clucking. Jacinth streaked through the air with no place to land, beating her wings as if she were cursed. The others responded, leaping in place and turning in circles. John Wesley was pleased. They at least believed him. "Ebenezer Rat!" he cried above the blizzard. Chanticleer crowed for order. He crowed again. He crowed a third time, but the hens were letting loose the strain of a wakeful night. Yesterday's horror, last night's dumb waiting, suddenly had a name, and that name had broken their control. Chanticleer moved. He laid a wing on Jacinth and another on Topaz, and held them close until they were still. He did this to one after another until they all knew him by his touch, and had finally settled into an uneasy peace. "Did none of you sleep last night?" he asked. They only looked at him, and he was moved to pity them. "God help us all," he said. Then, while things were momentarily balanced, he rose to a perch above them. "All right, take some comfort in this," he said, "that it couldn't have been Ebenezer Rat. Whatever Neezer is, whatever he might wish to do, he couldn't have broken Barrel's neck as it was broken. Ebenezer can break eggshells, and he is wicked enough to eat the eggs in them. But this is just a fact. If he went against a full-grown hen, either he would lose to her, or else her death would have been much bloodier than Barrel's." "Neezer has a grudge," the weasel pressed his argument in spite of the rooster's words. Chanticleer whirled on him. "And a grudge may be strong, but a grudge isn't strength." Right now he despised arguing with the insolent weasel, but he desperately didn't want his hens aroused again. "Can want revenge, ha! Little grows big for revenge. Puny gets strong for revenge. Then hunt him, kill him." "John Wesley Weasel, look at yourself. Those are the words of revenge. Who kills 3 chicks? Who leaves none to be prince? Who chooses 3 to kill 3? Him what was humbled by their father, Neezer Rat." "John, don't you see what you're doing? Now you want me to choose one to kill one. You want me to do what he did. I should become a rat to kill a rat. Avenge revenge? Why, that's a sin, and a poor defeating sin at that." "No, not." "What then? Why do you push it so?" "Let John W. be W. John hunts him. John kills him." The weasel threw back his head, unmistakable contempt for Chanticleer in his eyes. "For you." "Proof," said the rooster. "I want—" Suddenly a high, tiny voice pierced the air. "Out! Out! Out!" The voice came from underneath the floor, bleating, chopped with panic. A windless skittering under the floorboard silenced both rooster and weasel, and then the wee widow mouse shot from her hole. Get him out of there!" she beseeched Chanticleer, backing away even from him. "Please tell him to go away." The hens began a nervous jerking. The rooster hardly knew what to ask. "He wants in the back hole," the widow pleaded. "Please tell him to go away." The young mice were tumbling out after her, bewildered. Without a word, Chanticleer flew from his perch, directly out of the coop. He spun round the corner to the back. There, half in, half out of the widow's back hole, he saw a body. The head had gone in first, and then the rest of the body could get no further. Yet weakly the 4 legs were pushing forward with a hopeless will. But the entrance was impossible. 2 strong white feathers were buried in the back of this body, their span much too wide to let it pass. So it was against these feathers that the legs were pushing, and the feathers denied it entrance. Chanticleer heard Mundocani speak behind him. "Ebenezer Rat," the dog said. "Just so," said the rooster quietly. "Pull him out, Mundocani." The dog took the body between his 2 paws and drew it backward. Even on the open ground, Neezer continued to tread his legs, ignorant that his home was no longer in front of him. His eyes were closed. He was nearly dead. He had an impossibly deep wound on the side of his neck. His fur was matted with blood. John Wesley Weasel stood beside them. "You see," he said. "I see, you impertinent fool," Chanticleer hissed without lifting his eyes from the dying rat. "Now, Weasel, you look and see." He turned Ebenezer's head to the side. The wound yawned, but the lesson was elsewhere. Clamped in the rat's mouth was a foul section of a serpent, chewed away from its greater body. Organs enough clung shredded and gouty to the flesh to prove that one had died as well. It must have been a hideous fight. "Talk, Weasel," Chanticleer hissed, "when you know in God's name what you are talking about." In all his life, Chanticleer had never known Ebenezer Rat to speak a single word. Therefore he didn't expect an explanation now, and he asked no questions. He said, "Peace, Neezer," and he watched in silence until the legs stopped their treading and the body relaxed. The feathers lolled a little, and then they were perfectly still. Ebenezer Rat was dead. Chanticleer took the serpent from the rat's mouth. Then he yanked both feathers from their sockets and threw them violently at the wind. He stroked Ebenezer's fur smooth, groaning while he did. He kissed the rat. And then he leaped high to the top of the coop. "I want a council!" he cried. His voice echoed from the forest in the morning air. "Council! Every one of you, have your kin here by the afternoon. Present your breed before me. Let not one of them stay away. Not women, not children, not the old. Everyone. Have them all here by the afternoon." Though none of them had slept, they all took to their heels and left, John Wesley Weasel among them, and the dawn light saw them disappear. "Where is Scarce?" cried the rooster. "Scarce, where are you?"
"Here,"
said a small buzzing voice.
"Never, never gone."
Chanticleer looked and saw him just off the end of his beak. It did take some looking to see Scarce, even when one knew where he was. Scarce was a mosquito. Scarce was all mosquitoes, but then all mosquitoes are one, so they were all known by the one name, Scarce. And if someone had spoken to one of them, he had spoken to them all, and if someone avoided all of them, yet that there was always one he couldn't avoid. On the whole, there was no better messenger than Scarce. "I want you to put it into every ear in my land," Chanticleer said, "that I will have a council in the afternoon. Do more than inform them, and more than urge them. Command them to come. No one, no matter how large and powerful, how small and cunning, is safe who stays away. Perilous times, Scarce. I want every creature at this place by the afternoon." Scarce simply disappeared, and his buzzing went with him. Then Chanticleer went inside a hollow coop to be with Pertelote. He went wordless, and wordless he sat beside her. He knew the size of her sorrow.